Up to you. We're going live. Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm Karen Chaston, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Loss, Loving Life with Karen Chaston. I am a Beyond Loss mentor, speaker, and author, and I love to help people move beyond any kind of loss. And there are over 40 different loss events that can affect our lives, which means that each and every one of us are going to have multiple major losses throughout our lives. And we've never been taught what to do, how to move beyond loss. And I like to refer to our life as being in an infinity loop of love and loss, then loss to love. We just continually seem to be going from one to the other. And whilst most of us know how to do the love bit, not many of us know how to do the loss bit. And if you look around the world, you can clearly see that we've created these industries of, alcohol, pharmaceutical, trillion-dollar industries, and the suicide rate is so high. So today, I would love for you to comment and come on board and let us know where you are, what is happening. And the good news is that today I have this amazing guest, Sharon Gleeson, who is joining us from Perth. And welcome, Sharon.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
It's so great to have you here. So today our conversation is, and like we've been talking before we came on, and unfortunately I didn't show you where the comments are. Can you see the comments beside you?
I can.
You can?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So you're all aware of it? Okay. So, start commenting, everyone. It'd be great to know where you are and everything like that. But what we're going to do today is Sharon is a health coach, and we're going to, first of all, talk about her journey of not only why she decided on being a health coach, because she's done a lot of different things throughout her life. But we're going to start with loss. Because as I said, with over 40 different loss events that can affect our lives, it's huge. It is really huge. So what's happened in your life, Sharon?
Wow, that's a big question to start.
For me, loss is a gift. And I know it's very unusual, a very unusual way to look at life. But when you actually deep dive into your loss, you will always find that there is a gift. There's like a little treasure that has been left behind for you to unwrap so that you can live and love your life better. So what have you sort of found?
I think there's probably been a couple of fairly significant changes in my life. I mean, I did move around a bit. So, I moved from Perth to New Zealand to Sydney, back to Perth to Sydney, and then back to Perth. And some of those moves were harder than others. So that's probably one area that I've, experienced some loss. I spent 25 years in corporate, so most of my time in human resources, and then the majority of my career toward the end in change management. And then I had a massive shift 5.5 years ago, moving to health coaching. And that, really on reflection was a massive change. And it actually did take some time to get through that. And I suppose the other big thing is I lost my dad 10 years ago. So they're probably, some of the more significant losses that I've experienced in my life.
Yeah, I'm glad you started with the move as a loss event, because a lot of people don't consider moving around as a loss event, but it's quite traumatic, especially, leaving behind your friends, sometimes your family, but more importantly, just the everyday, this is the shop I go to, this is where this is where I drive, all the simple things that we all sort of take for granted. It is quite traumatic when you move, and like you've moved across countries and into different countries and the whole lot of it. So what did you find, and what would be your advice for people who are, about to take that journey?
I think the important thing is you've got to take it slowly, and I think try and take it, one step at a time. So I know when I moved to New Zealand, for example, I honestly felt like I was moving to a country that didn't speak English. A lot of the road signs.
They probably don't do that.
Back in the day, I mean, I'm talking 25 years ago. So these are back in the days where, we didn't have Google Maps. You had to actually look at a map book, and, I had no central point of reference. So I just remembered feeling, like in Perth, I kind of, have a rough idea. Even in Sydney, I could kind of figure out north, south, east, west. In New Zealand, I landed there. I just couldn't figure anything out. And I just remembered feeling completely overwhelmed. And in those times when you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to get anywhere, you know nothing, it can be very tempting to actually just sit at home. And I can remember feeling a little bit like I don't want to go anywhere because I don't know anyone, I don't know how to get anywhere. And I actually felt like I was falling into a bit of a pit. I also didn't have a job. So, I'd gone over there with my partner at the time. And so I felt really lost. And so the loss, was my family, a new country, no job. And so I always say, with my change hat on, it's all right to go through one change, but when you're going through, a lot of those significant changes all at once, it's massive. So what I did was each day I just decided to do one thing that day to try and get myself out. So, to actually go out and go, okay, well, today I'm actually going to go into the city of Auckland and just going to walk around in the city for a little bit, and then I'm going to come back. So then I did that, and I started to get some bearings. So it was just about taking it one little step at a time and actually setting a little goal or a task to do each day. So I had a reason to get out of bed in the morning, because I think if I tried to go get a job, find my way around, go look for a house, because we didn't have a house at that stage, we're just in accommodation, it would have been completely overwhelming. So I started to set a challenge to say, okay, well, let's find a new area today and go and explore that. And then, I started to actually, find some places that I liked. I found somewhere to go and get a coffee every morning, or to go and have a walk. I'm really into my fitness. So I was like, okay, I need to find a pool, and I need to find somewhere that I can go running. So, once I found a pool and I could start to, find somewhere to go, and I figured, knew how to get there. And once I found out a little running track, and, I tried a few things before I found something I felt really comfortable with, then I started to feel like I was, finding my feet. So I think it's probably maybe setting some small little tasks or challenges each day rather than trying to do everything at once, which is my normal tendency. I'm like, right, I need to get a job, I need to find a house, I need to find my way around here, I need to find my local shops. It was kind of just chunking it down into little manageable tasks.
I love it. And the most important part was you got into action. Like, so many times when loss comes into our lives, we sit around and we're like, this is all too hard. I can't do anything. No one understands me. And you could have easily self-isolated, like, unintentionally. You could have been housebound. Sure, you would have had your partner with you, but I assume he was working. And so that in itself is, yourself. So I love that. So let's move on now. And I'm pretty sure there's no comments today, which is most unusual. I'm not sure if it's because there's a holiday in Queensland and New South Wales at the moment, but who knows? But I can see there's people on board, so that's the main thing. But please comment, because we'd love to, have your interaction with us. But anyway, it will keep going. So let's move on to your dad, because you said he passed away 10 years ago. So I assume he wasn't all that old.
No, he was 71 when he died, but he got sick at 47. So he had a tumour on his brain, which when they removed it, it caused him to be paralysed on one side of his face, got meningitis, Parkinson's, and then Parkinson's disease, which then, developed into dementia. So, really from 47, he was sick. And I guess, mum and dad, I was brought up very middle class, they were both school teachers. Their whole aim in life was to pay off the mortgage so that they could enjoy life, enjoy their retirement, travel, and, they had all these dreams. And, the really sad thing was that my dad was forced to retire at, 48 because as a teacher and a high school teacher as well, the kids weren't respectful of him, and, he was, deaf in one ear, and it just didn't work. So he had to retire, and he actually went into counselling, which was awesome because, he was a lot like you, actually, just a really beautiful, giving person. But
well, thank you.
my mum and dad never got to enjoy their retirement. And that was the sad part, was that my mum was left, nursing my dad. And then when he passed away, she was still really fit and able and I didn't get to live out those dreams. And I guess part of that was why I did end up making that tough decision to leave my corporate job, because I thought, half the time we're so busy trying to make a living, but life's not worth living. And I didn't want to have that. But yeah, when my dad died, I think also too, sometimes when someone's sick for a really long time, for 5 years he was in a nursing home, and I remember when my youngest daughter was born, taking him to her, he didn't know even who I was or who she was. So for 5 years, he didn't know who any of us were. And I think when you lose someone slowly, sometimes that whole grieving process doesn't happen the way it needs to. And there's no right or wrong way. When someone dies suddenly, that's tough too. But it's actually even just been quite recently that some of the grief associated with my dad passing has actually come up for me, and that's 10 years down the track. So I actually had a physical response when my dad died, which also had happened to me when I was leaving Sydney the second time. I absolutely loved it. I didn't want to come back. The girls were settled into school there. I loved where we lived. I had an amazing group of friends. I just loved my life for the first time in a long time. And I didn't want to come back. And I actually remember I got really sick and I had like a bronchitis kind of thing. And it went on for weeks after my husband had said to me, the dream job that we thought would never come up for him to come back to Perth came up. And also at the time, my dad was really sick and my mum, she needed my help. And I felt like I needed to come back. So I went to the doctor and he was in his 60s and I said, look, I've had this, because I'm someone who never goes to the doctor. I'm like, no, I'll be fine. I just couldn't get better. And I went to him and I said, look, I've had this thing in my chest, like my throat always sounded like I had laryngitis or something for a couple of weeks. And he said to me, it's actually, and this guy was in his 60s, he said, it's actually a physical reaction to an emotional response. And I was like,
oh my God, I love that. I just love that. Because so many doctors, I'm going to bring up my favorite book, which is The Secret Language of Your Body. Now, I'm pretty sure most people have heard of Louise Hay and You Can Heal Your Life. Well, this book by Ina Segal takes it to the whole next level, because not only does it go into the symptom, it gives you more than what Louise Hay, as in she gave you an affirmation. This actually gives you a remedy on how you can go through it, what you can say, what you can do. It is absolutely amazing. And I cannot believe the amount of times that I bring this book out, when I'm working with my clients and they'll say this or that, and I'll look it up, I'll photograph the page, I'll send it to them. And then, within hours I go, oh my God, it's gone. Like even the other night, I had a bit of a sore throat and I also had an earache. So when I got up in the morning, I literally did this and they were gone. Like they were gone within like 5 minutes, both of them. It was really credit. Thanks, Jason. Yes, physical manifestations of trapped emotions. That is exactly what it is. And because when we're grieving and we're in any scenario where we're not really sure that we want to do something, like it's clearly said, I'm going back to Perth for my husband's job and to be there for my parents. You didn't want to go.
No.
And you probably never voiced it, that I have these feelings that, actually need to be expressed.
Well, that's the thing. He said to me, it's your body, throat is trapping your voice because you don't want to say that you're going. And I do remember thinking like, this guy's lost the plot. But as soon as I told people I was going, which was like almost like vomiting to try and actually get the words out, it went away. And then when I realised how true it was when my dad died, exactly the same thing happened, that my throat just constricted and I couldn't speak. And so I was like, wow, Dr. Carpenter was actually right when he told me that. So,
so how long ago was that?
So we moved back here in 2009. So that would have been 11 years ago.
So I just love that, because he was so spot on, because so many medical doctors are now coming more into the holistic side of it, which is fantastic. And it is long overdue from my perspective. And I'm like you, I never go to a doctor. I go to a book like that, Louise Hay's book, first before I will ever go anywhere. And I'll look up and I'll go, yeah, that sounds about right. So I will do the deep dive, the internal work to actually make it work, and it does. It really does. Our body so talks to us. So I love that. So you mentioned that your dad's, you didn't really cope with your dad's passing, as in the proper grieving process. And I totally get that. My dad had a stroke when he just like a couple of months after his 70th, and he died when he was 77. And that 7-year process of him going from this very strong personality and physically strong person down to this person who was like half the size as he used to be, who couldn't even speak, who could just look at you, who would actually tear up. And I had never seen my dad tear up when before he got sick. It becomes a bit of a blessing when they pass. And I'm saying that from love, because it's like, I kept saying to my dad, and he was a very religious man, I was like, well, why are you hanging on? It's like you're afraid to die. Like, what is it that's keeping you here? Because from a live and love your life perspective, there is nothing here. Sort of thing. Does that, like, I hope that came across from love, because it was all with love, and my dad's always with me, so he knows it comes from love.
Well, it's interesting because, one of my brothers lives in the US and one lives in Margaret River, and my nephew as well. And so it's very difficult, for us to get together. And I can remember, so on the Monday they stopped feeding him, and he took until the Sunday to pass away.
Oh, wow.
And every night we kept thinking, he's going to go, he's going to go. And I remember on the Wednesday night, I hugged him and I whispered in his ear, I said, Dad, just go. I said, please, just go. I said, honestly, I'll look after Mum. We will be fine. And I felt awful saying that, but it was killing me and my mum. I think it was also saying, and it's going to end. There is no coming back.
Yeah.
And, once you get a bit of distance from it, you look back and you think about it. And I think what it was he was enjoying. Somehow he was still there, and just all those times that we were together in his room. And also because my nephew had come and then gone back again for the weekend, it was like he was waiting for, him to come back.
Yeah.
And we just kept saying he's probably just loving it, and us all being together and so on. But interestingly, when he passed away, the next morning was Mother's Day. And I remember, because my husband, every night I'd been staying, there. And my husband said to me, listen, it's Mother's Day tomorrow. And my girls were little at the time. I think Emily was 5 and Olivia would have been 8. And he said, they've made things at school for you. You've been away all week. Please, can you just come home and be here in the morning when they get up, and then go and see your dad? And I said to the nurse, I said, what do you reckon? She said, well, we just don't know. And, of course, I went home that night and he died when I was gone. So my mum and my brothers were there, and I remembered feeling so ripped off. I was like, how could you do this?
He did that on purpose. So he would have done that on purpose, and they do that. Like I hear so many people go, they waited till I walked out of the room and then they died, and I feel so guilty. Why did I walk out of the room and this and that? They're going, no, they did that on purpose. Like they totally do it all. And I actually find it quite comforting in sort of knowing that we actually choose when we pass. You know what I mean? Even though we're sick and we actually go, no, I'm going now. You know what I mean? Which I think is quite comforting. I don't know what other people think.
So only a couple of years after that, she had breast cancer and, had a couple of times. And my mum does stamping, and she'd made these beautiful bookmarks from my auntie, and my auntie sat with Mum in the hospital, and Mum had to write out her messages on the back to every one of her friends. And Mum just said it's such a big project, and they finished it. All of her kids had come in. They all live on farms. They'd all come in that night, and she went away in the night by herself. which
Yeah.
we all thought, oh gosh, fancy, but that must have been, her choice. I
It
agree
is.
with you. I do believe that people, no matter how sick they are, they kind of, to an extent, choose when they go.
Oh yeah, no, we totally do, and not only that, when we are sick like that, we are spending as much time on the other side as we are here, so we're flitting between both of them, which is probably makes it a lot easier when we go over there permanently. Anyway, that's what I sort of know, and I'm happy with that. Okay, so we've got some comments here. So Aurora, yep, Louise Hay's books are wonderful, and they are such a guidance for all, and and let's face it, Louise Hay, like I think she died in 16 and Wayne Dyer in 15. So even in herself, she's been, lived for 90 years. And I always love Louise Hay's, like she literally started her business in her 60s. So, which I love. It's such encouragement for us all to learn from people like that. It doesn't matter what age you are, you can always do whatever you want to do. Nothing can hold you back. And it's a great philosophy. Kerry, I saw your dad pass and he looked so peaceful. That's beautiful, Kerry. Yeah, that's really lovely, and thank you for sharing that with us today. Okay, now let's move our conversation on. So you worked in corporate for a long time, and you were a change management. So that in itself is a lot of loss, a lot of moving forward, leaving behind the old and, embracing the new. And sometimes the new is something that maybe you don't really want to embrace, but you're being told this is what we're doing. So let's talk about that and the women that you have helped.
Yeah, so I worked on a lot of change projects, from simple things like relocations or system implementations right through. And most of what I did was divestments, acquisitions, and, restructures, which always, would result in, redundancies, changes to jobs and so on. So they were the tricky ones. Even something as simple as, I can still remember one time we were doing a relocation, and, it's just, because with every change, people have got concerns. So it's just about going through, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And then they want to know, how's it going to impact me? And then how's it going to be implemented? It's actually, a great, once you understand the change process, is actually really good. And in fact, sorry, just a side note, I was saying to Karen before, I'm really good at helping other people manage change, but when I'm in it personally, and I can remember when I was moving from Sydney actually going, I know this stuff, but when it's you, it's a completely different ballgame. But even something as simple as changing desks for some people can be such a massive change. And as you said, sometimes the change can be good. I'll never forget, there was a project I was doing with an oil and gas company where they were implementing a new expense management system, and people hated the old one. Like they just, as part of our research, we went in and interviewed a cross section of people, and all they talked about was how much they hated the system, how much time it took, how archaic it was, and how cumbersome it was. And I can still remember saying to this woman, so you'll probably be really excited to know that the company is implementing a new system. And she went, oh, no. And she said, no, that is not good news to me at all. And I was just like, what? You've just told me how much you hate this existing system, and I'm telling you I've got the answer, and you're telling me you don't want it? I'm like, what's wrong with this woman? But it was typical change. And she said, I just don't want to have to learn another system. So that's the thing. Sometimes people can struggle, like they like the familiar, and it's then that, well, how do I actually, they worry, am I going to be able to, is it going to be better? Am I going to be good enough? What am I going to have to do differently? Yeah. They have this fear around, going from the familiar to the unknown.
That is so true. And it brings up all of our sort of unconscious beliefs about ourselves, like, am I good enough? Can I do it? Can I actually learn this? And we all have them, and we all sort of worry about them. But I guess as a change manager, it's about the way you manage it, people's expectations of themselves, and sort of, helping them along. I've found that the best way to introduce any system is to try and allow other people to see their fingerprint on the design of the new system. asking their advice, what would you, if you had a magic wand, how would you change this, or what would you do, or would it make it, easier? And just by their comments, you can say, look, see, we've introduced this because of what you said. So often people bring a system in and then they go, this is what it is. And everyone goes, but if you'd asked me, I would have changed this or this because it's not going to work for this reason. So they're sort of doing new systems like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. And that was part of the engagement process, was really just to go find out what's wrong with the new one. This one's coming. What would make it easier for you in terms of the system, the training. So, yeah, you're 100% right. It's getting that engagement through the process is really important. But I think also it's good to understand, and you'd probably talk a bit about it more from a loss perspective, Karen, but, once you understand the concerns that people go through with change, there's a really great, it was the Ken Blanchard 6 stages of change concern model that it's really good at. It just goes through information, concerns, personal, implementation, impact, collaboration and refinement. Like it's 6 clear stages, and it goes through the different questions that people have. So you can always, plan your change by, working on the different concerns and making sure that you've got those things in place.
Yeah. Well, I guess you covered everyone's concerns. You've got it all covered. That's great. Okay, Aurora, thank you for being so interactive today. Let's see what you're saying here. Yes, it is their choice when they're ready to go. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And our journey does continue, whether we're in this realm or beyond. We're just not here physically. Changes, I know, and brings up many emotions. Hi, Belinda. Great to see you here. Okay, so now, Sharon, we're like already half hour in. We've only got half an hour to go, more or less. So let's deep dive into what you're doing now, because I love it, and why you moved from corporate. So let's start with that. What was your thinking, your choices about why? Because I'm sure, when we're in corporate, we all get very comfortable with the salary that comes with it and the guarantee of the salary.
Yeah, I did love the salary, although I did spend the last 10 years consulting, so mainly with mining and oil and gas, which was, at the peak it was awesome, but it started to get a bit lumpy in Perth, back in 2014, 15, around then. So that was one thing. The big thing was, I think, I had 2 girls, and one went to high school and one was still at primary school. I was trying to juggle consulting and the girls, and when we had children, I really wanted to be a present mum. I wanted to be at the sports carnivals, the assemblies, pick them up from school, and they both were doing ballet at quite a high level. And so, every day I had to be picking them up at 3:30 and to ballet at 4 o'clock. So what I found was that my hours that I could work was just shrinking and shrinking. And even though I was managing it okay on the outside, inside I was really stressed. Like, a lot of the projects I was doing at that time were quite high impact, and they weren't the sort of project where you could say, oh, sorry, I've got to go and pick my daughter up, it's 12 o'clock on a Wednesday, because on Wednesdays she had to be at ballet at 1 o'clock. I can remember I'd always be like, oh my gosh, like I've got to go, and I'd be, driving to school and I'd be stressed. I was always stressed. And then she'd be like, oh, I forgot my ballet tights. And it was just this constant stress. And, I was that crazy mum just, running in and out. And, I probably was like the duck, on the surface I looked like I was gliding along, but underneath I was paddling like crazy. Yeah. And I can remember thinking, this is what I'm good at. This is what I really do like. Then I suppose there was, a fair amount of ego in it in hindsight, but I don't feel like I'm I don't feel like I'm someone who has got an ego, but I think I quite liked, that I was doing these big, important projects.
Yeah, and why wouldn't you?
Which I can say that now, with humility. But I was like, well, what else can I do? And I can remember actually thinking one day, do you know what? I'm just going to go work at Country Road. I don't know why I thought Country Road. I'm going to go work at Country Road, and I'm just going to work part-time so I don't have this stress. But I remember thinking, I'm not going to be happy because I'm going to feel like I'm not living to my full potential.
Yeah.
And so I think, sometimes the universe does things in a certain way, and So a few things, there was a stress that was, happening. A couple of the projects I was on, I was starting to feel like, I just feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall here. Like some of them were big restructures that were meant to improve the organisation's effectiveness. And a lot of the things that we were doing were being a little bit undermined. And I started thinking, why am I doing this? So I started to feel less satisfied with what I was doing. And, with the girls and everything, I just started to question, and I also looked at my mum and dad and I thought, you know what, I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be on this hamster wheel, just keep on doing what I'm doing because that's what I've always done. And what I've found, in the last 5.5 years is that there are so many people like that. It's like, well, I studied nursing, that's my thing. I've got to keep on doing that. Or I'm in child protection. Yeah. That's what I'm good at. That's what I've got to keep doing. Or I'm a personal trainer, whatever you are. If that's your skill set, you feel like there's no other option. And I guess, I was fortunate that a girlfriend offered me an alternative, which I never, ever thought I would step away from corporate or certainly make the radical shift that I did. And look, that came with some real struggles, and a lot of personal growth. Because
before we get into that, I want to go back to something that you said about, and what popped into my mind about how so many people are stuck in that, I call it the Groundhog Day days.
Yeah.
And they're just continually going over and over and over and over and over. And a couple of things that popped into my mind. The first one was Wayne Dyer and his infamous saying, which is, don't die if your music's still in you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I just totally love, because that keeps me going all the time, because we all have so much inside of us that we don't bring out for whatever reasons, whether it's because we've got the family, we've got to, support all these sort of things. The other thing is, I don't know if you've ever heard of Bronnie Wares. She wrote a book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying. She's an Australian, or she was an Australian palliative care nurse. And through interviewing, and it was mainly men when she interviewed them, in palliative care, she would ask them, what's your biggest regret? What's something that you really wanted to do in your life that you never actually fulfilled? And she came up with the 5 regrets of the dying. And I think number 3 was, I wish I hadn't have worked so hard.
And
another one,
people say that.
And isn't that amazing? Like, one of the things I always say is no one lies on their deathbed wishing that they had cleaned more. But, when you think about it, like, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. That is so huge for all of us, because why are we all working? Is it to provide, it's to be provided a lot more past our survival. And I totally, I know we're not here to survive. We're all here to thrive. But how much is thriving? Like, we all buy this stuff and we all have these, things that we all have to have. But is that what's causing us all of these illnesses, all of these sickness, all of this unhappiness in the world?
Well, I saw a study just recently where they said 84%, I can't remember the source, I can find it for you if you're interested, but 84% of the world's population are stressed.
Yeah.
And that was before COVID.
Yeah, but do you know what? I don't see COVID as a bad thing. I actually see it as a way of helping us all to actually stop.
Yes.
Because I feel most of us who have stopped and have gone beyond the next Netflix sort of marathon are actually starting to do the deep dive into not only ourselves but into our lives, and actually saying, do I actually need this? Or do I need all this? Why am I paying for this? Or why, you know what I mean? So we're actually looking into the things, and I think that we're all coming out with, we can still have a pretty good life for a lot less money.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think, the saying that I love, which was, again, one of the things, sometimes a few little pennies happen and before one drops, was, you're so busy making a living but not making life worth living.
Yes, I love that.
Yes. That was the key for me was, I don't want to be just making all this money and working and just keeping on that hamster wheel or Groundhog Day. I want it to be fun. So I guess the great thing for me was that when I did make the change, it has enabled me to have much more flexibility, to have the 16-week school holidays off a year. That was a big thing for me, but also to go take our girls on amazing holidays. I mean, we've had some incredible holidays as a family. And I remember when Dad passed away, what are the things that stay in your mind? Well, I don't remember my dad going to work every day or my mum cleaning the house. The things you remember are things like the holidays that you had as a family, or maybe the nights when you were sitting around, this is the sort of stuff that people have gone back to in COVID, where you might have played a game or done a jigsaw. It's the time that you spent together. It's not the time that they were at work. And one thing I remember, and it's only a little thing, but because my mum and dad were both teachers, I remember they were home either just before me or, just after me. And I used to like having them there. I used to love coming home and they were sitting having a cuppa in the afternoon together, but usually before they went and did their marking or whatever else they had to do. But I loved that. And it was, I guess, subconsciously, I don't think I ever said, right, I want to be here for my girls, but it was always, for me, a need that, I had. And, that time.
It's a happy memory that you had that you wanted to give your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I cut you off before, only because I wanted to stretch that sort of thought. But before we go into what you're doing now, let's have a look at more comments. Hi, Tony. Thank you. Yeah, and I agree. So, Aurora, it's not always about money, and it's not always about money. It's about our purpose and fulfilling our lives. And you know what? The happiest people in the world live in a country called Bhutan. Have you heard of Bhutan?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a country that's near Tibet, near India, and in Southeast Asia, and they are the happiest people in the world. But they do have a practice which most of us in the West may find is a little bit morbid, but from a very young age, they actually meditate on their death, which assists them to live and love their lives.
Yes.
So, you know what I mean? Because you know that you're only here for a finite number of days, that you actually make sure that each day that you are living and loving it. And that's exactly what you've done. You're like, well, I've got to get out of this grind. My kids are growing up, and, you can go, well, what, they're going to leave home in, 5-10 years. Well, I want to not only give them happy memories and experiences, I want to actually be there for them. And good on you for doing that, Sharon. So how did you manage to do that?
Well, that was actually with Aurora's comment there, that is exactly what I've now found is that, and that's why I think I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, is because I am living my purpose. So I think if I look back at when I left school, I studied teaching, got to my long-term prac and went, this is so not for me. But I've always loved to educate, to help people. And so that's always been the common theme through change management. That's always been about helping people make the most of whatever that change was and get through that. But, with what I'm doing now and, helping people through health coaching, I love that. Like, it's what makes me feel excited. And now I do feel like I am really living my purpose by, helping people improve their health, but also helping other people, coaching other people and mentoring them who are also doing the same thing. So, but it was a big change. And I think I had to go through a lot of personal growth. And it's one of those things where, when you make a big change in your life and, some of that stuff comes up for you, like the loss associated with, getting dressed up and going into the city every day and then working on my own and doing something radically different that was way out of my comfort zone. You don't realize often at the time what you're going through, but there was a lot of loss in that. And one thing that actually happened to me, so the last project that I did, it was a bit of a strange coincidence, but a CEO that I'd worked with in one of my first consulting jobs actually ended up being appointed the chairman of the board of the two companies that I'd merged. And so we'd sort of come back together, which was amazing. And we caught up for coffee afterwards. And this is probably one of the people I most respect in my whole career. And I remember sitting down with him, and it was after that merger that I stopped doing what I was doing in corporate and started my health coaching business. And I remembered feeling a little bit like, I feel a bit awkward telling him about this because he knows me as this, corporate person, and, I'd done a big restructure on his company and we'd had an amazing journey together. And I remembered telling him what I was doing, and he's a lot older than me, and I'll never forget it. It was a big, those moments that stay in your life forever. I thought he was about to go, "Oh my God, Sharon, what are you doing?" He went, "How can I help?"
Oh,
and I nearly fell off my chair.
Isn't that amazing?
It was amazing to me. And I was like, oh, I was gobsmacked. But long story short, he actually ended up being my business coach and mentor, which was absolutely the best thing that could have happened for me, because he knew me in my corporate career and knew me in that sense. And he also was able to then help me through this really tough transition. And I mean, I had to get really vulnerable. It was a pretty hard start for someone who you hold up here to share, what's going on here. So having a mentor to help me through that honestly got me through those first years.
That's so important. And it's good that you actually had someone who knew you, because he would have known your gaps. And there's a huge difference between being an employee and being a business owner.
Yes.
Huge difference. Huge difference. And all of your demons will come up and they need to be addressed. And that's one thing, people, in business, that's why they're so, I can't do this. I got to go. No, I can't go. It's all this sort of stuff. And I totally understand it. But good on you for realizing that, that he would be a great mentor for you, and for having the courage of actually telling him, because you could have easily walked away from that meeting without telling him.
Yes. And I think the other thing too is I could have easily, been in a coaching, mentoring relationship and not been vulnerable.
Yeah. And that's an important point. Good on you for sharing that, because a lot of people don't get very vulnerable with their mentors.
And I think that really, honestly, the only way that you can grow is to be vulnerable, is to actually really honestly share what's going on. Because I could have gone and, been setting goals and doing all this stuff and ticking the boxes and walking off and, whatever. But it was only when I shared with him my deepest challenges and struggles that he was really, really able to help me. So, so that was a big thing, was actually having a mentor. The other big thing too was, when you are doing something that's out of your comfort zone or new, you decide, okay, I'm doing this, and you start doing it. And with anything, you're always going to come up against the challenges and the struggles. It's what do most people do when they hit those boundaries? Oh no, I think I'll just go back to what's familiar. But for me, I think because it was such a big shift, and I know a lot of people looked at me when I launched my business and were like, oh my gosh, like, what is she doing? And they say that to me now. No one said it to me to my face at the time.
Which is good, because a lot of people said it to me, and it's like, what are you doing? You're still grieving from your son. Are you sure it's the right thing to do? And I was going, I can't not do this. You know what I mean? This is why everything's happened. For you to do that.
Worried what people would think of me. Like, I really was. Like, that was my.
Not now, though, are you?
My biggest fear was what people would think. How bad is that? And I remember someone saying,
now,
do you know what, Sharon? Like, other people are not lying in bed at night worrying about the stress that you go through every day. They've got their own problems to worry about. So don't worry about what other people think. And it was a really good piece of advice, even though it still took me a little while to get over it. And you know what? Your real friends and I mean, if you lose a few people along the way, well, maybe they weren't meant to be there anyway. But I've never lost anyone. And what they actually now, they're really proud of me. And they're like, wow, it's so amazing that you had the courage to do something different. And, that, yes, I have been successful and so on. But, often people pull back because they worry what people are going to think, or they're too scared to even make the change because they're worried about what people think. Or you come against obstacles and you go back, or you might, keep going, and then it gets really hard. And so many people end up going back to what's familiar because they don't want to actually, face those challenges. And I'm really glad that I knew when I made that step from leaving corporate and doing what I'm doing now, I had to shut the back door. If I hadn't had an escape plan, I would have quit multiple times over. And so
you were in. You were sitting on the fence.
All in. By being all in, you work through the struggles. And I'm so grateful now that I did, because honestly, I am so happy. Like, I love getting up in the morning. I love my life. It's fun. And so that's the thing, I guess, if there's people who you do want something different for your life, go do it. You just don't know what's possible and what exciting things might be there for you if you're not really living your purpose, as Aurora was saying a bit earlier.
Yeah, and it's so true. So there's so much you said in there as well. So a lot of the times people project their fears onto you in their comments, saying things like, oh, why are you doing that? And it's half the time it's because they don't have the courage to do that. They're also a little bit worried that if you change, then maybe we won't be friends anymore, or maybe we won't hang out together like the way we used to. Like, for example, I stopped drinking nearly 2 years ago. And initially everyone was like, why are you doing that? Like, you have to drink. You won't be the life of the party. No, you got to keep doing it. Whereas now, if I had a drink, everyone would be going, what are you doing? Like, we're used to you not drinking now. You know what I mean? But it is about you having the courage to be who you want to be, making your choices and then moving forward with it and understanding that it's your life journey.
Absolutely.
And if you don't, if you had gone back, imagine you're 90, how many regrets would you have had?
I know. And that's the thing, is like that thing that you were talking about with the people from Bhutan and thinking about, your life. And I guess that's the thing is, when you're growing up, you sort of, you realize people die, but you don't really fully get it, that it's inevitable. And so I guess, as you lose people, you start to think, wow. And I remember at my dad's funeral, like, there was so many people there, and just the things that they said about him. And it made me really think, I wonder, how many, this is really morbid. I was thinking, oh, what would people say about me at my funeral and things? And it sounds a bit morbid, but it's actually, it makes you think, what is the legacy that I want to leave? Is it, that you worked in this job and, because, you work in a job and you leave, and honestly, you feel like you're indisposable. But as soon as you leave, dispensable, I think's the word, not indisposable, dispensable. And at the time, it's like, oh my gosh, you're leaving, you leave, and honestly, they move on so quick.
They do move on so quick, and it is a bit of a shame. But what I found, every job that I left, I was always replaced by 2 people. So,
yeah, how often does that happen? But I think also it is thinking a little bit about the legacy that you want to leave. But also another thing that, I didn't realize when I was younger was that, you are responsible for your own happiness.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to actually figure that out. And, sometimes we look for external events and things and people, or alcohol, or just different, vices to make us happy, but they're only short-lived. And it's really only when you can, find your own happiness and be happy within yourself that, and I think for me that the shift was actually learning to be more grateful. And so part of what I've done in the last few years is actually, like, I do a little morning miracle where I focus on things I'm grateful for. So often we can easily focus on what went wrong or what we would have wanted to do better. And look, to be honest, I was brought up probably in more of a, if you get 97%, what happened to the other 3% kind of thing.
You were built up by teachers.
I know. So I probably was a bit more like that. The sort of, you do something, but rather than going, oh, I'm proud of that, or that was good, you go, well, I could have done that better, or, more hunting for faults and problems rather than looking what's right. And so I have 100% turned that around now to, I just look for the positive in everything, no matter what it is, because even if it's something that went bad, there's always something you can learn from it.
Oh, and always.
You've got to be learning your whole life. So
and when you're going to be learning your whole life, you start to look for more of the lessons in the things and the events that happen with you. I have a little practice that I do every night, and I ask myself 3 questions. So the first question is, what did I do today that I would do exactly the same next time? The next one is, what did I do today that I would do differently next time? And the last one is, what did I learn today about myself or someone else or the world?
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, so that I'm always improving yesterday me. So but I'm being aware of what I'm learning and growing. And through that process, you actually get more adventurous, if that makes sense. You're more like, okay, what can I learn? Like, like, just look at us, right? We're on the other side, like on opposite ends of Australia. I'm on the east, you're in the west, and but we're talking to each other like we're sitting in, next to each other. Look at technology. You look at this pandemic. Imagine if this had happened 10 years ago. We didn't have the technology that we had now. So everything happens at the right time. There are no coincidences. But more importantly, I feel that every loss and love event that comes into our life, it assists us to grow, to become the person that we're meant to be. Because at the end of the day, no matter what sort of relationships, no matter what we do, we are the only person that we are going to spend our entire life with.
It's a good point.
So when you think about it that way, why are we putting us last? Yeah, why are we putting ourselves last? Which is what I love about, like the fact that you're a health coach. When I was in my corporate space, I ignored my health, I have to say. I was busy, working 6-7 days a week, had a family. Sure, most of my kids were adults then, or young adults, but I still had, all of this sort of responsibility, and my health sort of came last, which we all give up our health so often in order to get our wealth, and then we spend our wealth to get back our health. And, Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs is the greatest example. He's the one with all of the money, and he's like, if I could pay someone to take away this illness, I would give it to them. You know what I mean? You look at Kerry Packer. He also paid someone for a kidney or something like that, for his health. So it doesn't really matter how much wealth you have. Your health is so important. So what advice, we've only got like 8 minutes less, or less than 8 minutes now. What advice would you love to give people on the health, and why you chose the health program that you help people with?
I think that the most important thing, because in corporate I did see so many people exactly like you who weren't making it a priority. We take it for granted, unfortunately, until we get sick. And so I did see a big pattern there, and particularly with women. Like with women, they'll put the kids first. It's usually the kids, the husband, often the dog, cleaning the house, and then themselves. And so it's about making it a priority, because if you're not healthy, I've actually got a male client and his wife that I'm working with at the moment. Now, he's only 42. He's got his own business. He sits at, and it's quite high stress at the moment. He's doing really well, but it's pretty full on. So he's sitting at his desk like 14, 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
He's not getting out and exercising. And he's saying, I need to get my health right, because I realized if I'm not around, my business is going to go down the toilet. I said, what about your family though? He's got a 6-year-old son who he can't keep up with playing footy. I said, what about your family? Yeah, you won't be around for your business, but what about for your family? And, I think the biggest thing with people with their health is that either they get a rude wake-up call, or you've got to find a why to make it a priority. So for me, I don't know what it was, but the first thing that goes into my diary every week is my exercise. Now, it changes. I don't have exactly this. Only one thing stays the same, which is my personal training. But the other bits, my swims and my other things I do, schedule around, what I do, but they always get scheduled in. My whole life, it's been a priority. You've got to make yourself a priority, but you've got to figure out what's the why. What's the reason for doing it? Because if people don't have that, they will very easily find an excuse to keep working, to keep drinking, to keep eating the foods that they know aren't good for them. So you've got to find, when someone comes to me and says, I want to get my health back on track, or I want to get healthier, even if people can, it's not about how you look on the outside by any stretch. It's what's going on the inside. It can be, you can look, great on the outside, but if your eating habits are poor, your cholesterol's high, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's about what's going on inside. I say, but why? Why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Because if people don't have a strong reason to do it, they won't do it. They'll find an
I
excuse.
totally agree. I had the hugest why. I had probably had about 5 different whys I wanted to stop drinking. And I stopped, and I've never had a drink. I don't miss it. I don't crave it. And you are so right. It always comes back to your why.
And I think also too, making yourself a priority. So, if that's having a conversation with your partner, if you've got children, with a family, you're a person too. I was running my kids to ballet and swimming and everything, and it's like, and then I'd feel guilty on the weekend when I wanted to go for a swim. Yeah. But I said to the guys, you know what? I'm going for a swim because, I need my time too. I need to have my exercise too. And they all know that I'm a better mum when I'm doing my exercise. Let me tell you.
Everyone's a better person when we're looking after ourselves.
And I've got a friend and I invited her to an event, and she said, oh, look, I'll come. And her kids are the youngest is 17. So they're up of 17. And she said, look, I'll come, but I'll let you know closer to the time because I just need to know what's going on in the family. And I said, but your kids are like 17, 19 and 21. And she said, yeah, I know, but I just like to be there for them. Now, and I respect that that's her, but I'm the opposite. I'd be like, you know what? Like, I'm actually deciding I'm going to do something for me. They'll be fine. Totally. Get your dad to take you, commit, do it. And that's the thing is, you should never feel guilty about making your health a priority because you're going to be a better partner, a better mum, a better employee if you do actually take that time to do some exercise, go do some yoga, take a walk, whatever it is that you want to do, but also, focus on your nutrition because honestly, yes, there are lots of quick and convenient options out there, but a lot of them aren't necessarily fueling your body with the right things. So
yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Now we're going to run out of time here like I always do. And you thought, what are we going to talk about for an hour? We could keep talking.
I know.
So thank you everyone for your comments. I have been reading them. And I'm, and I agree with Belinda. I'm amazed at how much a fortnightly cleaner coming through helps I agree. It is about delegating all the things that are not serving you in your life. If it is, I need time, if I don't clean the house, delegate it. Then you have time to exercise, to look at what you're eating. Now, there is one quick question I want to ask you, Sharon. When it comes to eating and exercise, what's most important?
Eating. It's 80% nutrition and 20% fitness.
Okay, now that's really great. I'm so glad you said that. I totally agree with that. Most people spend all their time at the gym and then they don't look, or they look at what they eat, but not all the time. Do you believe in the 80-20 rule, as in you can have 6 good days and 1 bad day?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so I believe 80-20. So 80% is nutrition, 20% is exercise. Because honestly, you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. Like I worked with a gym where we had a whole bunch of people in February last year. Oh, no, not last year. It was a couple of years ago. And they all got on board and we did a nutrition thing together. And all these people had been working out at the gym for years with 30 days of good nutrition. And I mean eating proper food, having a hormonally balanced meal. It's not weighing this, measuring that, not eating this, doing crazy fasting and so on. It was just good hormonally balanced meals, clean food. We incorporated some nutritional products, but people got the results that they wanted. And then they were, keen to keep going to the gym because they were fit and also, were getting good nutrients in their body. They felt happier, lighter, less bloated. So, yeah, so it is that. But I also believe too in balance, like food is a big part of our social fabric. So I'm with you, Karen, like 80% of the time, do the right things, eat the right foods. 20% of the time, enjoy a glass of wine or eat pizza or whatever you love to do. And that's for me, it's about sustainable, healthy living. And healthy living means different things to different people. It's not to me to say, okay, you've got to do this, you've got to do that if you want to be healthy. I'm like, what does it mean to you? And how can we then step, towards your goals?
I love that. Excellent. Well, thank you for being my guest today on Beyond Life with Karen Chaston. I absolutely loved our conversation. As I said, we could keep going. So I've shared your contact details. There they are again for everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for your great comments. So great to have everyone so interactive. One final thing that you'd like to say.
Make yourself a priority and don't feel guilty for it.
Oh, I love that. And on that, I'm going to just add one more thing. Make sure you have no regrets when it's your time to move on to your next adventure. So start to actually write down some of those things that you would love to do and make them happen. Bye for now. Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks so much, Karen. Thanks, everyone, for the great comments. Really appreciate it. Your interaction. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day.